Well, welcome to The View. This week, I'm really excited to have Jason Lamont, who's the Director of Integrations and Information Systems, join us. Jason, thanks so much for your time today. This is going to be great.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, this is awesome. So there's a question that comes up a lot around integrations and specifically with the kinds of work that we do and people that customers that we have. You've had 30 years of experience looking back at your resume. You've got government, banks, consulting, and now here at VistaView, there's a lot of companies in manufacturing and wholesale distribution that we work with. To say you're qualified to answer some of the questions I'm going to ask you about is probably an understatement. So really appreciate your time with this. When people talk about integrations, maybe just start here. What does that mean?
Well, first off, 30 years goes by quick and time flies when you're having fun. So yeah, I guess child labor was legal at one point in time. The integrations, what does that mean? Well, generally, when you're talking about integrations, you're referring to the process of connecting two or more separate systems or software applications together so that they can exchange data and you can work seamlessly. So basically, you're taking several different systems, integrating them together so you give the illusion of a single cohesive product running. And really, integrations are essential for business because they do allow that those different software systems to work together, but it allows you to basically streamline your processes, automate your workflows, and improve overall efficiency. It also has the ability to allow you to choose the right software products for your business because you can make them work together after the fact.
So the integration part is partly about like taking these different data pools that you have from software and other instruments around the company and then connecting all those different things together so that you don't have to have one system. You can have multiple systems, but the integration is about the connection component.
That is exactly correct. Yeah. And in this day and age, with cloud services and systems running locally, as well as other opportunities that really weren't available, like social media and whatnot. You can pull all those data sets together using integration, so that you can gain a view that you could not ever have before.
Is there? I mean, you mentioned SaaS, and then there's probably a lot of companies generate a lot of data on their own within the manufacturing plant, even would generate data. So are there different kinds of integrations, or are they all kind of generally the same?
No, there's lots of different integrations. In the methodology of actually connecting the system is different as well. So there's things called APIs, which is application programming interface, which is a computer way of saying there's rules and protocols for data exchange. So they basically say, in order to connect to my system, here's how you need to do it. There's, it's still the old file transfer method of exchanging data, using
like FTP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And having CSV files or XML files or whatever the case is in as your payload. Then there's webhook integrations, which do enable a real-time data transfer between applications. Really, it's kind of an event-driven situation. So for example, think about it as a new customer signs up on a website and it basically prompts the creation of a new record in a CRM system. There's also middleware integrations, which things like the Boomi platform are, and it's basically they're designed to be the glue, so that no matter what type of methodology the system you're trying to integrate to, whatever it uses, whether it does have APIs, whether it's got webhooks, or whether you need to do a file transfer because it's an old legacy system. Middleware basically facilitates that connection because it can do it all essentially.
And so, you've got connections and different kinds of connections, different methodologies of running connections, all that, does it lead to an information system? Is that what the point of a lot of the integration, or information systems entirely separate from an integration?
Well, information systems are related, but they're distinct concepts. So I think of an information system as basically a collection of hardware, software, data, people that work together to support the collection, processing, storage, and the dissemination of that data within an organization. Whereas a integration, on the other hand, as I mentioned, is the process of connecting two or more separate software systems or applications so that they can exchange data and work together seamlessly. But really, an integration leverages the information systems and connects the different information systems together is the way I would explain that.
Okay. There's a lot of conversation about data is the new oil, and so like that's kind of a buzzword phrase, meme thing, and I'm just wondering from your perspective, how does the integrations and the information systems that an organization manages, whether it's intentional or not, how does that help them become an intelligent enterprise or compete in the market? Is there a way that you see that helping an organization be more competitive?
Yeah, the short answer is, my life to this point, I've never made any really good decisions with partial or somewhat missing data.
Yeah, fair.
So the more data you can get to, the more intelligent of a solution you can, or telemetry you can actually get, and you can make decisions based on the data. So if it's real time up to the minute/second, you can make informed decisions, and you can really be quite nimble and dynamic in terms of adjusting to those newfound pieces of data and detail that you might not have if it's based on paper or email and whatnot. There's a lot more latency in it. So for example, use Twitter, for example. If you're flying WestJet, I've seen on a couple of occasions where somebody has a problem and they, post it on Twitter and they tag WestJet or any airline for that matter. The airline's able to react to that very quickly because they are taking into account that feedback, and they're looking for, the hashtags on their airline so that they can react.
So the information system in that case, if you could connect it to, say, my name, my Twitter hashtag to my name, and you found on the back end of the airline industry that me, Mark Binkley, is on a flight from, say, YYZ to YYC, then you can also, that's part of the information system at work, right? It's about understanding more about the context of what's happening, not just that somebody sent you a tweet.
Exactly correct. You can, mine the data so that you can look for, whether they're happy or whether they're upset with something, whether it's kudos that they're giving. It's, you've got the telemetry that you would not have without that integration and that ability to connect to that system. And, honestly, this day and age, in order to be an intelligent enterprise, you really do need to take those non-traditional highways, if you will, to data into account so that you can basically create a layer approach in terms of looking at what your customers are feeling, doing, what they're looking for, habits, all of those different things. It's part of the reason why a lot of folks that build mobile applications have all those extra telemetry components to their application. So, where are you? What time of day is it? And taking all those things into account to build a better product and a better delivery for you, the customer.
And so I imagine in some ways there's like the outcome or the result. I mean, it's one thing to say the data's there, let's connect and integrate. and we'll build that into our information system. But there's also another side of it, which is like, what do we want to get out of this? Probably.
Yes.
And so you can kind of design anything you want almost, or don't, and you end up with something, but it may not be what you had to hope for.
Yeah, no, it's you know, it's always important, and you know, everything that you do is to set the goal and the objective of what you're trying to accomplish, because you can also get buried in data pretty quickly as well. You can take a bunch of data points into consideration that really is just noise at the end of the day, and so it starts to make the view a lot more complex.
Mhm.
So there is the sweet spot. So you know, if you do it right, though, you're going to get improved decision making, because you're going to have the right data at the right time. You're going to have you're going to be able to enhance your customer experiences. You're going to be able to increase efficiency in the organization, and really by proxy of all that, you're going to be able to start to become innovative and a little more dynamic in your ability to deliver things, because you're going to have the systems and the details to make decisions that you've never been able to make before.
We just talked about that example with the airline industry, and connecting social data to some of your own data, which I thought was really interesting. But are there any other trends, aside from, say, social, that have had a big impact on how to compete? For example, like, IoT is another one of those things where a lot of people are, it's a big trend, let's say, or movement, where machines are generating data. And so is that a big opportunity for people as well, do you think?
For sure it is. There's oil companies, for example, that have built IoT devices on their wells out in the field, and they are able to, through weather telemetry and time of day, as well as sensing vibrations on the pump, they're able to determine, whether there's going to be an issue just through the history of previous occurrences, and sample that. And that is an IoT device. It's out there and doing temperature sensing, vibration sensing, pressure sensing, all of those, and using all of those data to determine whether the pump is running optimally or needs to be changed. So it's a huge opportunity. If I had to boil everything down to one of the biggest technology trends that really has impacted business's ability, it'd be connectivity. Because the ability to generate that data and get it quickly so that you can process it and understand it is everything. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that we do take for granted, and it is off, but I do have my phone here. Mm-hmm. These are high-powered computers that customers are shopping on and managing their lives and talking to their children, frankly, seeing where their children are. Mm-hmm. You can track location, do all of those things. So not only has technology affected business, but it's affected every single one of us in our behaviors and our expectations around what we're looking for from both life and business. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because there's for a separate thing, I was talking to people about expectations, and in this one particular industry, they're saying, well, our website, is fine. It doesn't need to change. And then we surveyed their customers, and they're like, well, actually, it should be like Amazon. And then their answer was, well, we're not in that space. We're not a retail. But the expectation now is not set by, say, your industry, but it's set by the best in class a lot of times. And so your point about, you can track, I can follow my kids and see where they are and make sure they're okay because it's on their phone. A lot of that expectation now is being carried over into businesses in any industry, no matter what you want, or no matter what industry you're in.
Yeah, it's kind of always been that way. Apple computers back in the day with their Apple IICs, which probably proves that I've been in this industry for 30 years. But they put it in the schools and gave the schools really good prices on it for no other reason than if people grew up using that product, they would have the expectation and continue to use it in their adult life. And it's really kind of similar in terms of personal life and our use of technology influencing our behaviors in business. It's really quite similar. And it's interesting too, is as our comfort or familiarity becomes more comfortable with our technologies, it becomes table stakes. It's no longer an improvement or an efficiency in business. It's really what you need to do in order to actually compete.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to make a comment that for anyone that's watching live, if you want to send in a question, feel free. I'll be checking the questions in a couple minutes here. But in the meantime, maybe Jason, if you could talk to me about some of the challenges that when people come to you or companies that are approaching you, and they say, hey, we're thinking about an integration, we want to enhance our information system. Is there some common things that people are looking for?
Well, there's, I guess the common things they're looking for is obviously they've got manual processes, probably the biggest common request. And so they have a need to keep a customer record in sync between their CRM system, their ticketing system, and their ERP system. And right now they're manually doing it. So they're looking for technology to basically replace that monotonous kind of rubber chicken activity of doing the same thing over and over again, and automating it using an integration. So that's probably the simplest way I can bake it up. But there is banking integrations. There is as I mentioned, there's CRM. There's EDI solutions to basically make purchasing and payments automated, so that you don't have to handle that manually. So there's an awful lot of different flavors, but really its goal is really streamlining process and eliminating the manual work,
the repetitiveness of it.
Yeah.
I remember a long time ago when one of my first university jobs was keying in numbers from surveys just over and over and over again, like 10 hours a day. It was so monotonous. But I imagine in a lot of organizations that some of the systems and processes haven't evolved much since that experience that I had for, say, invoices. I mean, there's a lot of paper invoices that happen as well. Is that something that can be integrated too?
Technically everything can be integrated. It's just how you get to the details and honestly how you've identified what your business process is, and building the integration solution to facilitate the business requirements is what it boils down to. So if you wanted to replace paper, your choices would be if you had a product, obviously, that could read PDF files, for example, you could use that and then integrate into that to then move it into your finance system. Or you could go to the street and find an application that does that specifically, take the results of that, again, move it into your financial ERP system, so that you don't have to process paper. You can do things like, your common everyday type bills that you get, whether it's, electrical, facilities charges, whatever it might be. And you could set up an integration that does a check and balance against that to basically question, hey, is this normal? And then, of course, say, yes, this is a normal electric bill that we get, and it's within 10% of what is normal, so it's okay to pay. So you can set things up like that as well, so that
you put rules around
Exactly. Yeah, you could put your policies and rules around about how much risk you're willing to accept, and the benefit of not having to distract your people by doing it.
It's pretty awesome. It's like, yeah, and especially I know there's a lot of challenges with finding people right now. I imagine this is one of those things that you could do. When the last episode we did, we had Rainer on. He was saying you could decouple your IT expenditure from your growth projection. And so I imagine this is part of the way you can do that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I would also word it in a bit of a different twist as well, because finding people is certainly a challenge, but saddling people with repetitive tasks versus the strategic, big thinking, creative things isn't what gets a lot of people's juices flowing.
Right.
And so it would make work a lot more exciting when you're working on problems that are requiring some creativity and some thought versus putting the proverbial rubber stamp on it over and over again.
Right.
So it really allows you to explore and take advantage of some of the opportunities that you might not have been able to get to because your folks are busy doing repetitive tasks versus
Right.
being able to actually get you on top of the mountain, if you will.
Right. So we at VistaView have, and you know this, but we sell ERP solutions. We're SAP Gold Partner, and so we've got Business One, by Design, S4 practices. We also work with, as you know very well, Boomi, and so there's different kinds of ERP systems out there. Some are on-prem, some are in cloud. You talked about, as far as integrations, there's like APIs, the FTP kind of process. There's different types. Is there the right way? Do you need to know this going in? Like if I'm using an on-prem solution, I have to use FTP process or method, or is there a right combination, or is there some combination that's impossible to resolve?
Well, I've never met anything that's impossible in my career yet. It's not to say throw out a challenge and let's find it, but it becomes more complex and it takes more time is what it boils down to. And to make sure that you're successful, it's really critical that you identify the key systems in your data sources, that you take the time and determine the integration approaches that are both available to you and your preferred one. Evaluating your existing data architecture. So is it positioning you in a way that facilitates you moving to where you want to be in the short term and the long term? Then developing that data integration plan, and of course building the integrations, testing them, making sure that it's delivering what the business requires. And then, of course, getting into that kind of steady state operation where you monitor and maintain the integration, and you learn through the performance of it, the things that you want to add. Because more often than not, when you're implementing it, it becomes a bit of a challenge to manage from a project perspective, because the great thing about integration is you can do anything you want. The bad thing about integration is you can do
anything you want. Yeah.
And it's because everybody gets so excited and oh, we can do this, we can do that, and we can fix this, and they start pulling all of these extra things into it,
Right.
Which really, of course, is scope creep, and it really harms the ability to deliver that integration in a timely manner to get the quickest value to the business in the shortest amount of time possible. So it's always fantastic that there's so much excitement, but you've got to temper it, because you've got to deliver the win, take advantage of it, learn from it, and then evolve.
Yeah. And I imagine the scope creep also has an influence on price and costs and overruns and deliverables and timelines and that kind of stuff as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking about price, there's a quote I saw recently about cheap and inexpensive aren't the same thing. And so I imagine, because the Boomi product that we have fits into the iPaaS category, of which it's, I know, a massive market. And there's all kinds of ways you can do integrations and all kinds of price ranges for all flavors and colors. Is there a difference between like a cheap product, a cheap integration, like whether you do it on your own or in a more expensive one? Are there advantages, disadvantages?
Well, the time-tested adage of you get what you pay for is still true. As far as integrations go, your cost is going to be based on the complexity of your integration. As far as the products themselves, it's all about what the capability of it is, and that means if you're typically the more expensive products, are have scalability in play because you can grow in concert to your business. So no matter how big you get, it's 100% scalable to support you.
Mm-hmm.
You can customize it so you're not locked into a specific method to integrate the systems. Thou shalt have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You can support what you need from a business perspective. One thing that is seldom talked about and is overlooked far too often, especially with the political landscape of our world right now, is security.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the products that have a bit of a higher price tag do have enhanced security, so that your data, which is, as you said, the value, the oil, if you will, is protected at all times. Mm-hmm. And can't fall into unscrupulous individuals' control. Support. There's not only online support, but there is active support in terms of monitoring, and mm-hmm. Some products also do not only monitoring of the solution, but also the data within the solution. Mm-hmm. They do it in a way that isn't compromising your integrity, but does it in a way that kind of creates a feedback loop, if you will, so that they also are learning. So you can almost think it's an integration of the integration, but they're learning about how that integration functions so that they can improve their offering to the market, so that if typically this is the data map that happens between these products, they can give you that scaffolding about so you don't have to reinvent the wheel right from scratch, and then you can go in and tweak what is required specifically for your business. And then of course the features and the capabilities of the product. More right. Expensive products have deeper capabilities. Boomi, for example, has over 200 pre-built connectors to again provide that scaffolding, so you don't have to build it from the ground up, and not everything has to be a bespoke solution. You can leverage the base connector and then go in and spend your time customizing it to your business process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. When it comes to quick, cheap, and what's the other third one?
And quality.
Yeah, right. So you have quick, cheap, and quality. So there's always, it seems like to me, there's a trade-off when it comes to you can get something cheap, but it might not have the same quality or stability, or you can get something really quick, which may not have the cheapness. And so there's always a balance that you probably, as an evaluator of an integration system or a seller of an integration system, you're always trying to balance, I would imagine, some of those three things, right?
Yeah, and it's the project method management methodology as well. You can have it done well, you can have it done inexpensively, or you can have it done quickly. Pick any two.
Right.
It is that way. And the other side too, and I'll use an analogy, is the cost of implementation is certainly real, but it's like buying a car. the cost of the car is an investment, but the operation of that car over the long term is really what costs you the most. If if you buy something inexpensive at the start, but its operational costs are higher, it's not going to actually be cheaper. It's going to be more expensive.
Right.
If you have one security incident and your name gets in the papers again, that's got some impact for it. So the cost it's a total cost of ownership at the end of the day. It's not all about just what does it cost me to buy this off the shelf. It's what does this cost me to operate for the term that I need to have it support my business.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. I love it. It's a great analogy too. I like that. It's very visual. It makes sense to me. It reminds me of my first K car. I think
a very reliant automobile.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So in terms of like the speed thing, I imagine that's also something that you come up against sometimes, where one of the big triggers I would imagine is something's broke, and oh my gosh, we got to fix this soon. So from your perspective, are there options for a person in that situation? Like is there a way to do something of quality at a price that they're willing to pay and quickly? You know what I mean? Or is it really truly that you only can pick two?
I really just like answering questions like this, but it depends.
Right.
It depends what's broken, and it depends how complex it is.
Right.
The way I would attack something like that, though, is what is the absolute critical item that is needing to be repaired.
Mm-hmm.
And basically start. I guess another analogy just popped in my head. Think of it like Lego blocks, right? In order to build a wall, you don't just ta-da, there's a wall. You take each piece and you snap it together, and eventually you build a wall or a castle or whatever you're building. So similar to this, start with the item that's critical that you need to solve, fix that, and then continue on with the other components.
Right.
So that you get the highest value to the business, fix the issue, which then, causes people to not have to sweat as much and can relax, and you're facilitating what ever the customers aren't getting currently or whatever the issue is.
Yeah. And going back to the design piece, and again, I'm a big fan of analogies, and I love the Lego one that you just gave. But it occurred to me that there's a very real design component to this. So even if something does break, and let's say we narrow it down to that one thing, there may be opportunities to design this information system in a better way, or at least the data flows in a better way to get better, more accurate information on the other end of it. Is there a methodology or process around like that you take people through in terms of how to think about the design before getting into, let's fix this problem?
Yeah, it's like anything. You can start off without a plan, and you might luck out and get exactly where you were intending to be, or you'll wander aimlessly for far too long. And so the foundation of getting good requirements and examining the business process that you are trying to solve and trying to integrate is fundamental to success. So we start with talking to the consumers of the business process and map that out so that we can determine and translate that into what needs to happen from an integration perspective. Now, there are a lot of times where we've done it already, and so we don't have to spend as much time doing it, but it's also, and I'm sure everybody who's participating today or listens to this video, as soon as you make an assumption, you're wrong. And it happens every single time. I don't know what it is about Murphy and that law, but it works. And so even if we've done it before, we still go through that just to make absolutely sure that we are not missing anything, because everybody does have a bit of a different flavor at times.
Yeah, and I mean, when you were talking about talking to people within the organization, the stakeholders, I imagine you frequently are plugged in, or maybe it's who brings you in, but with IT people, um, because they're in my mind anyway, they're the overseers of data and the information and how that works. But are there other people that need to be considered? Like when you're saying talking to people at the front line, like are there specific user groups that are really valuable that you wouldn't want to omit from a conversation like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, business is set up as a hierarchy, and so there's lots of different folks on different teams that you do need to interface with to make sure that everything is accounted for and considered. There's the business end users that I'd mentioned. They're the ones that use it, and their input and feedback's critical in determining how it works, how it should work, what the goal is,
Mm-hmm.
and getting their insights so that you can make sure that the workflows and you've incorporated their pain points and again the desired outcome. There's the data owners, so they're the ones who understand what is critical for them to be able to make decisions. There's project managers who keep everybody organized and together. And of course, there's the sponsors, the executive sponsors. They're the ones that basically are making sure that the solution does facilitate what the organization is required, and as well as if there's decisions that need to be made, or something's discovered that is going to add scope, whether it's somebody's excitement about, hey, we can do this finally. It's ultimately important for them to understand, not get surprised, and then make the decision as to whether that does get incorporated into the delivery or gets parked for a later time. Without the executive sponsor, it has a tendency to go off the rails, because folks who are living it every single day, they seek perfection, and I totally understand that. But of course, with perfection, becomes you get into this endless feedback cycle of trying to make it better, and you don't actually use it in the real world.
As you're saying that, the part where you just mentioned the hierarchies, organizations, everyone can picture an org chart. A lot of organizations are built that way, and the idea is that it's reporting lines, but it's not necessarily the same thing as information flows. And so is that something that you see in the work you're doing with the implementations, that what an organization thought was their hierarchy is the same thing as their information flow, which ends up being different?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. I've never really thought of it that way. The short answer is, data is also hierarchical, but not everybody needs every piece of data. And so,
right.
You got the concepts of data warehouses and data lakes and those types of information systems. And everybody's accessing portions of the overall data that's available to the organization. And, as you go lower, folks need the higher resolution, if you will, because of course they need the ones and zeros, if you will, to make tactical decisions on the way things are working. And then of course, as you go up that hierarchy, you need summaries of it. Because you're looking for the trends and the strategic directions and some of the decisions that you need to make to change the course of the ship, if you will, so that you're looking at a different resolution of data is the way I would probably think about it.
So it's almost the structure of the information is also set up based on the kinds of decisions that are being made, depending on what level of the organization you're at. As you said, like at the bottom of a hierarchy, you may have ones and zeros, whereas at the top of a hierarchy, it's not that they don't have access to that information, it's just packaged a different way.
Correct.
Because it's more an aggregate.
Yeah, it's the result of it more than what makes it up.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about integrations, the pipe itself is just flowing all this information somewhere. It could go to a data lake, but the access to that lake isn't 100% for everybody the same way.
Correct. The way they utilize the results of the integration could be different. Yes. And, that I was kind of stepping wide with the data lake, but it could be, think of it this way. We mentioned this a few times today, but the CRM is set up, and you've got a user, a new customer that's created. And, the folks who are the business users, they need to know who that user is. They need to know where they're located. They have, the needs for those different components of that new customer and the details. But somebody, VP of sales or CEO, maybe what you're looking for is how many new customers do you have that month? Are you trending to your KPI target? Are you behind? Are you ahead? And so they might not know who the customers are, but they would know, they would want to know the trends.
Gotcha. Just real quick, I'm going to just say, because I see a couple of people are watching, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I believe I'll be able to see them on our end, streaming through the live channels, but give it a shot and let me know. Follow-up question to that, Jason, is you mentioned the executive sponsor and its critical role. It may or may not be the CEO, it might be the CIO or somebody of that nature. What role does that let me rephrase this. There's obviously a before and an after, like you've got the implementation, and the implementation happens. But are there tips that you have, or from what you've seen that are what works, or like pitfalls that you've seen that could help that executive sponsor when they're thinking about an integration project?
Yeah, I guess I'd break it down, into three different levels, which would be, before go live, during go live, and then after go live. Before, setting the goals and the expectations, and of course, the business leader basically, helping make sure that the objectives of the organization are clearly understood and represented. Then reviewing and approving those requirements in terms of the design. So yes, this is what we talked about. Yes, this is what we need. Basically, that team.
Oh, Jason, I'm losing you. Oh, I just lost you.
Okay.
I just lost. Let's maybe kill your video. See if that helps. Oh no. Oh, try now. Right. Yeah, we're back.
Okay. All right, we're back. Guess everybody's getting home from for lunch, I guess. The as I was saying, I don't know where I cut out.
I think you're at point 2.
Yeah, so ensuring that
Yeah.
team is resourced appropriately, I think is where I was cutting
Yep.
out. Okay. And then, of course, communicating with the organization and with peers. So basically making sure that the organization is informed of the progress and the direction, and that there's no surprises. During go live, obviously there's the go, no go decision. So are we ready? Is everything the way we expect it? And they have the gavel, if you will, they have the final decision. Setting up and agreeing to the KPIs and the performance, and helping get the focus on any issues that need to be addressed, and then again communicating the progress to the business. And then after go live, making sure that the integration is delivering that what it was supposed to, that they're measuring the success of that against what they were expecting, whether that's from a ROI, whether that's from a functional perspective, and again communicating the gaps. And then, as we had talked about a few different times, identifying those improvements or items that folks want to add after go live that they learn through actual use and or through the project, and then making that determination whether that gets added to either a subsequent delivery, or you go into the constant improvement iteration cycle to hey, we learned this and we want to change this, and make the improvements while it's in operation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I imagine we talked a little bit about security before, and also just the transfer of data. I imagine that is an important component to consider in early phases. One other question that related to that, if you comment on that, but related to that also, is there an increased risk with the frequency at which the data is, like if it's just an open pipe and data is constantly flowing through, versus if maybe you have a data set that only needs to be uploaded or once a week or once a day or once a month or some infrequent number like that. Are there considerations that you should think about from a security perspective or a frequency perspective?
Yeah, there is some functional considerations that you need to be made, which is probably the fundamental one is the data volume. And so the amount of data that you need to process, can it be transmitted, transformed, stored in the time period before you're requesting the next cycle? And so, otherwise you just get a log jam because you're not quite finished processing and you're requesting it again. And so, that's definitely a consideration. But, as far as how often, a lot of times it really is dependent on the business requirement in terms of the amount of latency before the data becomes less useful.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, oversampling, and a lot of times we'll build the integrations to be able to understand that the data has or has not been changed. Mm-hmm. And so if the data hasn't been changed, then we don't bring it. If the data has been updated and changed, then we do bring it. And then that's a way of shrinking down the amount of time that it takes to actually to move that. Mm-hmm. Obviously there's the data accuracy in kind of goes part and part with latency, but the amount of time or when the data is updated, and I'm talking a bit fuzzy here because it depends on the source, but if for example this one particular data set's only updated monthly, then sampling at any amount over and above that isn't needed. Mm-hmm. There's generally no harm in it because it's part of the benefit of using technical systems, is that it doesn't matter. They don't need to eat, sleep, or anything like that. So, use them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you are only updating specific data at certain times, we generally flip the paradigm, if you will. So rather than going and checking, we basically set something up to tell us when it happens and when it's updated. So it changes to an event driven. So it says,
Right.
hey, I've got something here, and then we go get it.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
I just wanted, we got a couple of minutes left, and I just want to chat about Boomi specifically and some of the projects that you've worked on. Either some of the ones you thought were the most common, or the ones that you felt like brought the most value to an organization, and how Boomi played a role in that. Well, and your team, not just Boomi, as a team.
Yep. Well, just the nature of who we are at VistaView, obviously, ERP integrations are, predominantly the highest. And it's, it's integrations between, the ERP system and CRM or inventory management systems. And there is e-commerce integrations as well. So, you update your inventory and your price lists from your ERP over into a platform like Shopify or Magneto, so that when somebody's on your website, they're using the current data that's really in your ERP system, so that what they're purchasing is actually an inventory, or they know it's on back order, and of course your pricing is correct, and then interfacing that into a shipping platform, so that folks, as we talked about earlier, have higher expectations, and so not only do they want to know what product for how much, they want to know when they're going to get it.
Right.
And so by having those integrations in place, so that you can give that telemetry live as they're looking to place that order. We've done that a number of times. There's the banking integrations that we've done, so that we move the account information and or payment information directly from the bank into the ERP system, which cuts down the finance team from needing to do that. There is marketing integrations that we've done, where we've connected into HubSpot for campaigns and targeting specific clients, social media platforms, web analytics. We talked about EDI briefly. That is pretty popular, and we've done supply chain integrations, to help manage the flow of goods and services from suppliers to customers, and the integrations with the procurement systems, inventory management, as I mentioned, and of course logistics providers. So those are kind of the top of mind ones that that are asked for quite often. There are lots of other projects that we've done, and there's one that was still ongoing, but it was about scheduling their factory. And the way we did it is we pulled details out of the ERP system in terms of inventory, resourcing, availability, all of those components and telemetry, moved it into a separate product. That separate product uses their secret sauce that they've created to optimize that. And once they've optimized that, we take the results from that separate product and we feed it back into the system, into the ERP system, to optimize the shop floor, so that their paint booths or they are short on inventory and it's not expected for a certain date. So, let's pull that project, put it to the side, because this one's ready to go right now. It optimizes that. So
like throughput. Yeah. Maximizing throughput.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I have a friend that works in like electrical implementation controls and electrical space. And it sounds to me something in that area where you're creating a brain almost for a factory for manufacturers.
And it's one of those things too that when you start getting at the data and you're able to see the bigger picture, whether you're using Power BI or other visual Tableau, pick one, another data visualization tool, you're able to see things that you wouldn't normally be able to see because contextually, when you're looking at a specific field in a specific system, the concept of when you move to the next page or you look at last month's or this month's or next week's, those numbers don't carry through it mentally into it. Right. So really you need to look at it from a different context, which is the visualization tools that are available. And it starts to expose things that you just had no idea about. It's honestly pretty cool.
Like choke points, that might be limiting throughput.
Yeah, or opportunities to for just a slight improvement, and you get rid of the constraint. It's pretty surprising what you discover.
Just a couple of questions I have, and those are awesome examples. Thanks. When it comes to lessons learned, is there anything that kind of stands out for you? I know we talked about advice for the executive sponsor and tips and tricks for them, but in general, in terms of how to get the most out of an implementation project, or just general like tips about, over the years I've seen this. Like, do you have any thoughts like that and parting advice?
Yeah, and it's similar discipline to other projects for different technologies, but start off with clearly defining the scope and the goals of the integration project. That's your map, if you will, of where you are and where you want to be. Part of that is also understanding the difference of automating the process you have versus the process you want.
Right.
So if you're integrating what you have, but it isn't quite working, it is a perfect opportunity to do some process reengineering as well and determine, integrating to that level versus, just moving what you have in a digitized fashion. If you have a process that isn't good, integrating and digitizing that is just going to make that not ideal process just run faster in a not ideal way. So, there is opportunity to do that cleanup. Second would be engage your stakeholders and communicate throughout the project. Keeping everybody informed and making sure that your stakeholders have clarity around what's happening is also paramount to success. Part of success is also, knowing what you have in terms of data. So, doing that thorough data analysis and mapping exercise. Choosing the right integration platform obviously goes without saying. It's what you are using to actually connect the systems together. So you will want to choose something that is both flexible but also scalable and independent of your system operation. And what I mean by that is, dead and gone are the days where it should matter whether you're running on-prem or in the cloud, or whether you're choosing a Microsoft or Azure or Google or all of them. It shouldn't matter. Your integration platform should be able to run and connect to any and all of those. And then, of course, testing thoroughly and making sure that your implementation and your integration is exactly what you were looking for and is performing at the expected levels. Those are, really the, I guess that's 5. That would be the 5 lessons learned, through delivery is, if you do those things, you're going to come out with a gold star every time.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if this is intentional, but you're suggesting to pick the solution. I think it was 3rd in the list, which is to me smart, because you that you, as you're going through the talking to the stakeholders and figuring out exactly what you want and being super clear on that process of or the outcomes, I imagine that takes a fair bit of time, and it becomes clearer once you have that, which is the better of the solutions out there.
Yeah, identify the need, and then
Right.
identify the solution. The other side of it too, that is a bit of a challenge that I've seen, is folks look at the solution and the cost of it, and they're picking, the low hanging fruit, if you will. And when there's a with Boomi, for example, you pay per system with a connector. But when you're doing one integration, the connector costs the same. And so when you're just starting out, it seems like it's expensive, but use SAP by design, for example. But once you have that connector for SAP by design in play, you can now use it over and over again. So all the different systems that you want to connect to SAP, you do not have to buy another connector for SAP. But when you're first starting out, you basically you have to invest in 3 connectors, because of course you've got to connect 2 systems together. Otherwise, you don't have an integration.
Right.
And then the third one is messaging in case there's an issue that it's call home, call a friend, so that folks can dig into what happened, whether there was a piece of data that wasn't in play as expected, or the system was down for whatever reason and wasn't available, whatever it might be, but just sending that notification. And so by making the decision later in that evolution, you have a bit of a bigger view of the advantage that you're going to leverage from that investment in your
Right.
bypass or integration solution.
Right. Awesome. Well, Jason, this has been great. I really appreciate your time, and so thankful for all the insights and tips that you shared with us and perspectives. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to do it. Love talking about integrations and technology.
Yeah. If somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I got lots of different ways, but best way is email, which is jason.lamont@vistaview.com.
Awesome.
Vistaview
Solutions.
Yeah, I already abbreviated it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Mark.